Well, to use the words of my colleague Brandi, happy day to you today. We want to really thank you for joining us here on this week's episode of the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network. And this is hosted by the three certified coaches on our team. That's Brandi Biswell, Sheryl Eisenhower, and myself. And we produce this episode every week that we're available that we're not traveling because in our jobs we do have to travel, and sometimes one of us is teaching, so sometimes it's not all three of us here, but we present this every week and we want it to be something that brings value to you. And one of the things that we watch is we watch a lot of industry discussions. We watch where business owners are frustrated. What are the frustrations of management that are going on out there? And this week's episode is no different. And actually, Brandi brought this one to me the other day. She sent me a link and she said, "Hey, I think this would be a great topic for a future episode." So I said, "Hey, that's what we're doing." And then we had to hunt up the link. She was sending it because, hey, she sent it. She done forgot what she had sent out. So then we went to work. We did our background. We did our research. So Sheryl, let's start with you. What's your thoughts on today's topic that we're going to discuss?
I think it's a major topic in businesses right now. I mean, things have changed a lot, as we know, in the economy and the lifestyles of people and employees. The list goes on and on. And so, working with companies to prioritize what we do with our people. Do we retain them? Do we let them go? Or do we grow their talent?
Yeah. Brandi, what's your thoughts as an overview for today's topic?
Yeah, well, I like that this was like an article that was research based on what we all need to be prioritizing as employers in 2023. And I mean, I think the workforce is changing, and I sometimes I'm like, is it changing, or am I just getting to be like a really old baddie? I don't know. So I'm trying to like grow and evolve with it. But it's we have to keep up, right? We have to keep up as employers. Otherwise, we're not going to grow, and we're not going to actually retain our talent because we don't know what does this generation coming up and what does this workforce expect in our just ever-changing world.
Yeah. And a couple 2 weeks ago, we interviewed Sean Kramer from Holy Smoke out in California. And Sean was sharing with us, and he was dead on the money. And it was probably one of the most popular episodes. And a lot of people have talked since that time about Sean's wisdom, how he's put forth. But the thing is, and Sheryl, you deal a whole lot with people and in your DISC assessment process where you actually assess their personalities and see how people fit in and how these challenges are coming into place. So as you look at this, I think our subject matter today is going to be one of vast importance, and this is what it is. What should companies prioritize in 2023 to retain and grow talent? And one of the things is, and to be honest with you, we're starting to see some economic changes in this country right now. We are seeing where people are losing their jobs. A lot of major corporations have implemented some pretty massive layoffs that are going on out here in the very real world. And we also have to contend with the social atmosphere, the social media, and what we see that people are talking about, which is that a lot of times where our employees, the people that work for us, are being taught by social media that they have to set the parameters of the job. They have to be right up front and tell the employer, I'm not going to do those kind of things. We've discussed things like quiet quitting and other things. So this is the first topic in this article that Brandi sent us, which is the struggle to create positive work cultures. And Brandi, you're probably a champion of this, to be honest with you, because the way you guys at Blues Brothers and your own business have worked to establish this. But it says work culture has taken its biggest hit in decades, with more employees dispersed than ever before. Workplaces that are traditionally in person see their talent grown to greener pastures. There's a risk of toxic bubbles building within companies that don't consistently offer all their people the same level of flexibility or positive experiences. And this has quickly raised the stakes for what it means to be a best place to work. So, Brandi, as you hear that, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I don't know that we're the best at it either. I mean, we struggle just like everyone else. I think the most important thing is to talk to your people, though, and know what's important to them. Because what I think is important to them is often very different than what's actually important to them. So just knowing your team and knowing your people and knowing, how do they want to see their work-life balance? Do they feel that you offer enough PTO? Mental health is a huge thing in the workplace nowadays. Do they feel supported by you? Or is it still that old management style of top-down point system? You do it my way or the highway. So I do agree that it is definitely a struggle, and we feel the struggle here as well. But I think, and kind of ties in with what Sean had said, if you know your people, I think that's going to put you way ahead.
Yeah. And it's interesting when you said that about mental health, because yesterday I was on the road, as y'all know. I had to attend something. And so I was about 3.5 hours there and 3.5 hours back. But as I was going through Sirius radio in my vehicle yesterday, I came up that now Sirius has channel 109, and the name of it is the mental health channel. The mental health channel. So what you're saying, yeah, and like mental health days. So Sheryl, what would you say about this prospect of the struggle to create a positive work culture?
It's always a struggle. It's been a struggle for years. It just seems more prominent now because there's so much communication between people that you didn't used to have. I mean, you actually used to have to pick up a phone, or you had to actually have to see someone to talk to them. You couldn't go to Facebook, or any of the other things. But the problem with that is they're not always accurate. The news is not even accurate. So the people that we're working, that are working under us, are hearing so many different things, some accurate, some inaccurate, and then they draw their own conclusions. And as we all know, the water cooler subjects are out there. Nobody keeps anything secret anymore. So they talk about it. Well, then that precedes it to the next one. So the employer has to stay on top of it. Just because you know them today, it may be a different story in a week.
Yeah. And one of the things that Brandi said, Brandi, I want to kind of clear it. I think you said talk to. I think I want to say the words talk with. And
I like that better. That is good.
Right. I also want to say that you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. And in my thinking, and this is something that I've had to conquer in my entire life, we are intended to listen twice as much as we talk. And I watched both of you smile really big when I said that. So, that is one of the challenges. Sometimes learning to shut up is a miraculous thing as a business owner, as a manager, where you listen to the people and what they're saying. So the next one is from an ideal employee experience to a real commitment, and to me, this means when they're committed to what you're doing. All the changes in the world outside of work have fueled a strong desire from employees to see their companies commit to new ways of doing things. For many, this has seemed like a push towards sustainability that's driving social causes, but really it's about getting more commitments. Employees and consumers are voicing an active desire to see companies embrace changes to address major challenges in business and society. And I want to reinforce that really big, because right now I'm spending a lot of time not talking to clients, but I am probably having more conversations with their employees right now, because what they're seeing is the last 2 years, sales have been very easy. It's been easy. And ever since the 1st of January, it's almost like somebody has turned the light switch off. And I'm having to work and coach employees that they've got to go back to the basics of building that trust, that relationship. In fact, Brandi, I've got time scheduled in March. I'm coming out to your company to spend a couple days in training with your people. So, Sheryl, I'm going to start with you on this one. What do you take out of this from our ideal employee experiences to real commitment?
Well, commitment's a hard thing to get. It's something earned, not given. So it's the amount of time that you have to spend with these people to get that commitment and the value you have to give them. It used to people work because they had a work day. Nowadays, they want to be the people want to be involved in the decisions much more than they did before. Nobody wanted to be involved. Tell me what to do. I'll do my job. You give me a paycheck. I'm done. But it's not like that anymore. You can't buy commitment by just telling them what to do. You have to listen to their opinions. Again, it's all communication.
Okay. So, Brandi, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I wanted to first go back to mental health real quick. You talked about us just listening more, so I didn't want to interrupt and keep talking. But I think the other thing because I know there's people out there, I guarantee watching the show that, they're like just rolling their eyes, like, here we go, mental health. Everybody's like, just so fragile these days. But I think the reason it comes up more now is because it's not as stigmatized as it once was. I think it's more acceptable to talk about it now in today's culture. And also, I think that we focus on the mental health of the employees so much. And what we often forget is the mental health of the leaders of the company. And often they're the ones that are struggling just as much, if not more. And so I think it's important that we don't forget about them and the burdens that they have and making sure that those leaders in that company are addressing their mental health. I taught Office Management 101 last week here in Kansas City. And that came up, just the enormous amount of stress and pressure that leadership is under. And then going back to this ideal experience, it talks about in here a 4-day work week. And I know that Walt Disney is getting some lashback because they just called their people back to work 4 days a week. They had been working at home. And their whole thing was, look, we are a company that's based on creativity, and we can't be creative if we're not together and around each other and bouncing those ideas off each other in person. So they're calling their people back to work 4 days a week. And then yesterday I posted on one of my pages about employees for the last 9 years, employees have been the most disengaged out of any time period. And it was interesting because the perception is that it's maybe the people working from home that are disengaged. And while that's true, it's just as much the people that are working in the office. It's just this general disengagement that people have. And so I think we all need to be looking at how do we re-engage our employees, and what does that look like, and what's that going to take to get people loving their job again? Because let's face it, we spend more time at work typically than we do with our families at home. So this should be a great place for us to be engaged. The 4-day work week thing, I don't think would really work. I mean, it could work, I guess, in our business. I guess we could rotate the CSR so that there's still people here 5 days a week, but they're rotating 4 days a week. And I, as a nurse, worked 4 days a week shifts at points. But the problem is, I think in an office job, we know that we're only going to get a max of 6 hours out of somebody in an 8-hour shift. Employees or employers that own companies, sure, they work 14, 15 hours a day if they can, because they have so much work to do. But I think it's really hard in just the typical workplace to expect someone to work 10 hours a day. We did try it actually with our technicians, I'm going to say maybe 3 years ago. We spent a summer and went to a 4-day work week. Somebody had brought it up. We're like, hey, let's try it. But believe it or not, at the end of summer, they wanted back their 5-day work week. They did not like having the 4-day work week, which, again, my perception would have been different. My perception would have been they loved having that extra day off during the week, but they actually didn't.
Mm-hmm. And I've worked 3 days and 4-day work weeks in my working career before I became self-employed. And I was a big proponent, just like you were. It's like, this is great, even though it was longer hours for the day. So the next one is management, a burden fewer want to bear. And boy, this is so true, because one of the biggest needs we have out there with many of our clients is for a very great number two. People are looking, and Sheryl, you're even having conversations with number twos. And Brandi, you know the same challenges that we face with sometimes with the number twos in the company. And many times I'll tell a client, one of your biggest challenges is your mid-level managers are not bought into what you're doing, and it becomes and if you watch Brandi Blinken, she's going through her head. She knows exactly what I'm talking about and what we're facing out there. But we're seeing people don't want to move into these management roles like they did, which is inconceivable for my age bracket, for our particular as baby boomers, because that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to progress up. But we're seeing a lot more people now that are wanting to stay as just a member of the team and finding these managers. And Brandi, you just did a training with managers out there in the Learning Loft. So I'm going to start with you. What's your feeling on this? Because I know you and Jeremy depend critically on some people that have moved into both in field and your operations and in your office there, that without them, it will be impossible for Brandi to do what she does.
Well, I mean, look, it's a lot easier, right, to clock in 9 to 5. And once you're done with the day, you're done. You get to go home, you get to be with your family, you get to turn it all off and don't have to think about it till you come back to work the next day. Unfortunately, in those leadership and management positions, that's not the case. My director of operations get texts at 3 a.m. from people calling in sick. And this is also where we see the highest rate of burnout as well. So when we talk about mental health, this is where people just get exhausted. There was that, we keep talking at our office about, and I'm going to probably get the story wrong, but there was a Olive Garden here a little bit ago, and stop me if you remember the story, but where a guy called in sick, and I think he said that he was calling in sick because his dog died. And the manager said, well, then bring the dead dog in. And he was, of course, fired, and there was a lot of backlash. And so people think of that like, oh my gosh, that's horrible. I can't believe he would do that. But I think most of us in leadership and as employers can kind of understand that he was probably speaking out of frustration from people calling in sick continually and being understaffed, and then customers getting angry and not understanding that they're understaffed. So I think a lot of us actually can empathize with that guy for saying, bring the guy's dead dog in. And we don't know the whole story, right? Maybe last week the guy's grandma died, and the week before that his aunt died. Like, this could have been a chronic problem. So I think we have to be careful about what we hear and what we read, and make sure that we know that there's always two sides to the story, and not just go after those people who are probably burnt out and having a real tough time.
Yeah. And one of the things is I'm going to put forth here is a book, and this was written, and Brandi, you have met this couple. I have not, but this is Mike's story and his wife, and what they deal with is they speak to blue collar groups across the country, and their thing is how do you build top performers, and how do you build leaderships in blue collar workforces? So again, the back has got Mike and Rita's wife. That's one of the books right there. But one of the things you do is by reading, you learn a lot. I know I've recommended several books in the last week. One was the E-Myth for Contractors, and we've also recommended Mr. Jenkins Told Me and other things. But reading these books is going to help you because it relates real life stories out to the world. So Sheryl, anything you want to add with what Brandi just said about the management role and finding people to fill this management role?
Well, I'm continually talking to people, as you say, in the interviews, and their thing is there room for moving up? And they have, a lot of them have taken a position, they have gotten moved up, and they'll call or they'll email and say, I wish I'd never been into this. And they'll quit. And the reason is they were not, number one, they were probably not taught to be a leader. And number two, they just couldn't accept the responsibility of taking care of others. It's just kind of like a female. All females are not cut out to be mothers.
Yeah.
And all people are not cut out to be leaders.
Oh, I can guarantee you, I was never cut out to be a mommy. It just didn't, it would never have fitted me whatsoever. But Brandi, that also takes us back. You just finished a training course and you had one guy in there that has not even started at the company. He was hired as an operations manager, but we went very deep with him. And I know part of what I asked you was, how does he look? What is your thinking? And you told me you were pretty amazed at what he had brought in when he came to your class. Am I correct?
I said if his employer didn't want him that he's going to work for, send him my way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was great, and he has a lot of experience. He's coming with a lot of experience in the military for 25 years. I think we have to remember that it's lonely at the top. And I remember I've had office managers in the past, just start to feel that burnout, and I have to remind them it's very lonely at the top. And one of the things I think that we can do as employers is make sure we are giving that support to our leaders. The thing that I loved about last week is I loved seeing those leaders come together and know that they're not alone. So one of them's telling a story and the others are like, oh yeah, we've had that happen too, or here's a similar situation. And I think just that feeling of, oh, okay, it's not just us, we're not alone, goes so far. And I think, Jerry, you and I in our coaching, a lot of times we're working with the leaders, and a lot of time it's for me at least, it's just listening to them vent about the frustrations and just letting them talk it out and know that there's somebody there supporting them. So I think it's really important that we're giving that support to our leaders, whether it be through mentorship or classes, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. And then the next subject matter here says, and you may not think this affects you, but I want you to think about it. It says hybrid and remote teams. Well, here's what I want you to think about. If you run a service business, actually every technician you got is working remotely every day. He may come into that office in the mornings, he may come in the evenings, but through the day, that guy is a remote worker out there. And one of the things that I've seen is helping out that helps out tremendously is when these companies have communication amongst themselves through the day. One of the things that Brandi found some years ago that we recommend is a messaging service called Telegram. And we see these companies talking back and forth through the day, encouraging each other's. But in today's world, if you have remote teams, you got to have stronger connections. That goes even deeper because we have clients now that have CSRs and office workers that are not in their office, or even further, do not reside in the United States, because we have some people that have hired CSRs from another country that Brandi has trained. So, Sheryl, I'm going to go to you first on this one. What's your thought?
Hybrid is hard any way you go. And if they're remote and you don't have that connection, if something happens, then you have to figure it out yourself. When you cannot, with the Telegram, I mean, we use Telegram all day, every day. With Telegram, at least you can send the problem out. You can get it answered instead of wasting hours doing it. Hybrid's hard. I mean, I work away from my manufacturing plant. Some days it's hard not to have that touch control. So I'm a fan of hybrid in certain things, other things I'm not. I think it needs to be in our office and things.
Right. Well, I was just going to bring up, you're an example of a remote owner. You're not at your office. As a rule, you may not go to your office, but maybe one day a week at IBD. Am I correct?
Pretty much. I mean, if there's a problem, a little bit more, but as a rule, it's as long as it's running fine, I leave it there. I do have cameras if I need to get in. I have all the contacts. The thing about it is we have got very good at me running away from the office and some days I think they don't want to see me. So I think they like me working remote.
Okay. So the next one is, we've got to shift the focus. The last few years, we've called it the Great Resignation. And what we've got to start doing is figuring out how to retain the workers that we have. And Brandi, this is one of the areas that I think you've done a lot with your, with your stay interviews and the other things. So how important is this to focus on retaining the present work team we have?
Oh, it's very important. And it ties back into what you were just talking about. I'm glad you brought up about the technicians during the day basically being hybrid, because years ago, I lost 2 technicians, and during their exit interviews, they said they were extremely extroverted and they didn't like being in the truck by themselves. We do 1-man trucks, and they didn't like being in the truck by themselves all day, not feeling connected. Only interaction is with the customer. And it's funny, that telegram I saw years ago on 60 Minutes on a Sunday night, that's where we came up with the telegram from. And it has made a huge difference. And, so one of my techs can be at a job and there's fleas everywhere, something's not going right. And so they can kind of vent about it on Telegram, and then the coworkers can step in and put funny emojis or be like, oh, you always get the one with fleas, or whatever the case may be. And all of a sudden they don't feel so lonely, and they don't feel like they're just out there by themselves with no one to talk about this experience with. So I think that's really important. And the stay interviews, those are becoming even more and more critical. Everybody thinks these exit interviews, we'll do an interview when they leave. By the time they leave, it's too late. They're checked out, you're done, it's all over with. But if we do these stay interviews regularly, we can figure out what does make them happy at work. What is the best day that they've ever had at work look like? What is the worst day that they've ever had at work look like? What makes them stay? Do they think their compensation is fair? And just open up that conversation that otherwise you wouldn't normally create an opportunity for.
Yeah, it's a matter of finding out from them, what do they consider a perfect day at work? And just like you said right there, being out there alone for some people is great. Sheryl and myself, we are people that work great in offices alone. Okay. If we were in the same office and within eyesight of each other, it would be not the best situation. We work better whenever we're on one floor, she's upstairs, I'm downstairs right now, But yeah, I think you just hit a key thing. So Sheryl, what's your thoughts on this great retention thought?
Well, the thing is, I see the hiring pool at this time, which is very limited. And if you want to look at it, just being pragmatic, is we need to keep the people we've got. If they have the ability, we need to keep them. And the thing about it is, sometimes it's not a whole lot that you would have to do to retain a person. If you communicated with them, if you found out, like, Brandi's interviews, if you find out what could it be, the minutest little thing to retain this person. Because what's it been, a year now, the whole world was resigning. And so now it's not as much. I've been keeping up with the numbers. It's not as much. And the thing is, there's new jobs being created. So that's pulling from the pool. So I am encouraging people, if you can work with your person, keep them engaged, retain them. Don't lose the year or 2 years worth of knowledge that you've put into someone just because of something that you could have controlled.
And something, that's where I feel that one of the processes we use with a lot of our clients is the annual SWAT meetings. And one of the things that I feel so strongly about the SWAT meetings is it gets the opinion of, instead of the employer telling the employees, these are the problems, the employees are telling the employer, this is the problem. I know I've got ones coming up in a week with a new client that's never done this before. And there is all kinds of questions about this. And if I said the name, both Sheryl and Brandi work with him, they both would understand exactly what this challenge is, because he's wanting all the details of how this is going to work out. And then there's the problem of productivity paranoia. Productivity is a hot thing. And that's one of the things that we have to work with, where we have to have maximum productivity because of the rising prices that are out here. One of the things that we talk about a lot is how to make your workforce more effective and more efficient. Okay. So this is also where it can become a challenge getting your employees to understand that making efficient use. And Brandi, to use your example, you just said a while ago, in an 8-hour day, maybe you get 6 hours of productivity. And when we look at a service crew in the field we actually have maybe 5 hours of productivity in an 8-hour course if you actually start tracking this time. So Sheryl, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, everybody's not at the same level of productivity. Some can do, like, go back to Brandi. Some you can get 5 hours out of them, some you can get 6. But the thing we have to manage more is, are they productive? Are they doing what they're supposed to? I'd rather have someone less time productive with better work ethics than have 10 pieces built wrong and done in a couple hours. So I'm, especially in my business, I'm looking for perfection at the end, not the hours it takes to get there, as long as there's no goof off there.
Right. And I think that's an amazing thing that we have to reinforce to our people, because many times they're thinking, I got to get it done faster. Well, the first thing to do is get it done better. Once you get it done better, then the efficiency and the speed is going to pick up as you get familiar with this task. It's like, Brandi, if you have a new CSR, they're going to be very, very paranoid going under those first phone calls, scared of what they're going to lose. But the only way they're ever going to get good is they got to go on to it in the real world, right? So what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, kind of going back to what Sheryl said, I would rather give somebody task A, B, C, D, and E for the day and have them get that done and get that done very, very well. And then they chat for 30 minutes with their coworkers versus having the opposite, where it's silly to think that people are robots and they're going to sit at their desk for 8 hours and be working every second of that 8 hours and not need to get up and chat, have a water cooler conversation. Most human beings, especially the extroverts, I'm more of an introvert, they need to be around other people, and they get their energy from those conversations, etc. So that is part of the fun of work, is getting to come to work and seeing, your coworkers that you can talk about, what you did this weekend with, etc. So we can't be like just completely monitoring their computer and making sure that they're working completely, no breaks except for lunch, that mouse is continually moving, they're working on something. That's not going to create a good working environment. They need that time to diffuse. So I love it when I can hear my girls out there like just laughing and hooting and hollering over something, because then I know they're happy at work. And as long as they get the work done at the end of the day, that's all I care about. Likewise, it can backfire if you have those CSRs working remotely and you don't give them enough work to do. That will actually drive them away as well. If it's a slower season and they've answered all the phones and that's their only job duty and you don't have other projects for them to work on, they will quickly get tired of that, of not having enough work to do, and start to look for other options.
Right. It's also very critical to give pats on the back, I think.
Yes.
When somebody does something, just giving them a pat on the back. And I even did that to Brandi yesterday. I read an email that she copied me on, and I could tell when I read this, she had really went outside of her comfort zone and probably redid this email. And I just sent her a message. Hey, that was a very well worded email that you just sent out. So Brandi, when I sent that, did that make you feel good?
Yeah, I texted back to you that I really appreciated hearing that, because I wasn't sure how the email was going to be construed. And I spent an hour and a half on it, erasing, writing again, erasing, proofreading. So that feedback just really boosted my confidence and brought me up for the day. And we talked about that in our office management class last week, about intentionally looking for ways to give those kudos out to your employees. I think so many times we're focused on what's the negative, what are you doing wrong? You have to be really intentional to look for those opportunities to say, hey, you did a great job with that.
It did, and you recognize them, because, like I said, when I read the email, I knew that when you went through a lot of deep thinking, that was a very important email that you were writing, and I could tell you had really poured into that. So the next of this is power skills. Rise to the forefront of leadership. And this is one of the things that comes into this. So Sheryl, I'm going to go to you first, because a lot of times when we're talking about things, we can have a personality that we've got to step up out of our comfort zone. And then there's other personalities that we have to actually suppress our personality conflict, our personality behavior patterns, which we all three have to do that, because we're in that high D classification over here on one side. So we've actually got to suppress it, which actually exhausts us, and it is painful to do this. So Sheryl, power skills rise to the forefront of leadership. Is that a true fact?
It is. I mean, the emotional intelligence, communications, influences, empathy. I years ago, I don't know if many people knew what the word empathy even stood for unless they went to the dictionary. But the thing about it is, yeah, with the behavioral skills, I'm continually working, especially with leaders. Okay, if you're going to talk, you've got to talk this way, the way you communicate. People need to remember that what they say are words. What someone else hears is a whole different subject. And when they take it in, they're going to generalize it. So it's not going to be exactly what you said. I mean, when we were young, we did that circle where you told something and it went around the circle. And by the time it got back to you, it was entirely different. And it was because people hear less than what you say always, especially for us high Ds. If we all were talking on here at the speed we really want to talk, nobody in the TV world out there would ever understand us because they don't have time to hear what we say. And so you can try people. I would encourage people to try it with their employees of doing a parrot back at times of saying, did you understand what I said? Because you will very seldom ever get the exact information you sent out back to you.
Yeah. In fact, Sheryl, you have a group of company that you're doing this for everybody right now. And this has been one of the overriding requests is, can you please get our supervisor to slow down his speech? Am I right?
Yeah. In fact, I did his disc with him the other day and we had a conversation and he knew he did it. That was the bad part. He just said, I know I did. I know I do it. I never knew I needed to change it.
Yeah. So, Brandi, what you're thinking on this, on the power side of things?
Yeah, the first word that came to my mind, and it's actually in the article, is EI, emotional intelligence. And I think 10 years ago, we didn't even talk about emotional intelligence. It was just starting to become the big buzzword that it is now. And I hate to keep going back to my class last week, but that's part of what all the leaders did is they took an emotional intelligence quiz. And it was just for them to take. The answers were just for them to see because it gave them the areas that they could improve upon. And I think that's really important, that self-awareness. Part of my EI goes along with my DISC, where I have to be really careful when I send emails. And we've talked about this before. Like, Jerry, that email yesterday was probably, if you printed it out, pages and pages. That is not my nature. My nature wants the email to say, you suck, and hit send. And I want to keep it short and I want to keep it sweet and to the point. So it took a lot of energy out of me to write this long email that got my point across, but not in such a brash way of you suck, but my perception is. And so just being aware of that, I think is hard. And I'll tell you, you want to screw up a company, take somebody with a very low emotional intelligence and make them a leader, and you'll have a dumpster fire.
Yep. In a future episode, we're going to have a guy on here talking about emotional agility, okay, which came up the other day. And I told him, I said, hey, man, I need to get you on here and have an interview with you about this emotional agility thing. But what we're saying here, and you got to remember this is also key to sales. Sheryl said a word a while ago, which was empathy. And this is a common question I asked a technician. Okay, if you present a price to someone and the customer says, well, that's more expensive or that's too much, tell me the first words out of your mouth. And what they started, and every one of them does this, they go into defending the price. And what they left out is, I understand. I understand why you feel that way. Yeah, it's a rough world. And yes, prices are rapid. So I understand your frustration completely. But instead, they go into defending it, and that just drives the wall up that makes it that much harder. So that's kind of approaches we're taking right now in this down sales mood is we've got to show more empathy towards this customer's concern. And the next one, Brandi, you're dead up the money on this one, okay? Because, you know, Diversity. Diverse pipelines offer a next generation advantage. And this is so true. And that was one of the things when we talked about Mr. Jenkins the other week, and I talked about his advertising and his marketing, where he was showing his diversified workforce out there. This is the real world today. We've got to be open to diversification in our workforce. So, Brandi, I'm going to go to you first on that one because this is dead up on there. And this is where millennial workers today think. You got to remember this, whether you like it or not, this is the age bracket you're going to be hiring team members from.
Yeah, I want to go back real quick to your I understand. This is why you're coming to talk to my team, because as soon as you said those words, my whole body relaxed. I could feel my whole body relax. I understand. And you talked about, when they leave that out, it builds up the wall. But when you say that, I understand, it takes down the wall completely. Like, oh, okay, this is a safe space now. We can relax. And that safe space goes into diversity. I mean, did you ever think 3 years ago that we would be referring clients to hire people from other countries? I didn't. I wouldn't have dreamed of that. But that is part of the diversification. And we're living in an age where it's never been so easy to diversify with the workforce. We can apply. We have so many opportunities when we put out a job ad. We have hundreds of places we can post that job ad to really pull that talent in from all over. We can go and search for resumes. We can get on LinkedIn and search for people that meet our criteria. We just have such an advantage that we haven't had in the past.
Mm-hmm. Sheryl, what's your thoughts?
Well, one of the things that I read in it when we were doing it was during the hiring process. People are trying to hire these diversified people. Why? Before you look into your own company. Your own company, they have different abilities that you have not even tapped yet. So I've always looked within before I looked without. If I couldn't find it within, then I was forced without. But the thing about it is now everybody's just trying to add the numbers to their employees instead of trying to improve the employees they have, maybe eliminating the fact of needing at least one of the employees they're looking for, because they have the talents that we have not searched out yet. Well, we look for managers when trying to hire a manager that knows nothing about the company, where it's possible we have an employee that could be that person. So that's my thing is look within before you look without.
Yeah. And, Brandi, that's where you're a very unique situation because you have so many people now that are coming to you to learn more how to be great clerical, office, CSR, dispatchers, all these different skill areas. And I think it's really a fantastic thing that you have opened up a focus for the need to train our clerical workers. In our industry, there is, in the chimney and venting industry, there is so many technical seminars going on. It's slap unreal. I mean, it's everywhere. And they're going on simultaneously, it seems like. So when you look at that, and that's what Sheryl's talking about. How can you build people in there? And it goes to the next one, the new employee learning imperative. And this is one of the challenges. In today's world, many of the hires that you're going to hire are not going to have the basic skills that they need. And this goes back to their childhood. It goes back, they know how to operate an iPad without a problem, okay? But they've never had an opportunity to run power tools and the other things that we're talking about. And that's where they've got to learn. So, Brandi, your thought on the new employee learning imperative, because it is imperative that they learn how to do the job properly.
It is. And I like that in this article, it talks about making that learning easily accessible and right at their fingertips. And I like that this sentence, given the employee starts the moment, given that employee learning starts the moment they onboard with a new company. And we've talked a lot about that in here, how important that first day of onboarding is. And so that learning starts right then and there. And how can we make that accessible and also applicable? I'm glad you brought up about we have so much technician training, but we don't have a lot of CSR leadership training in our industry, because for so long, I feel like the office and the office managers and even the technician managers have been like second class citizens where they're just over here doing their job, but we're not giving them the skills that they need to be successful at their job. And so I'm just so happy that, our industry is waking up to that fact and waking up to that need.
And, I want to add on that. And one of the problems is there is so much virtual training out there that is available, just like you said, at the click of a button. But what's got to happen is the owners, the employers have to buy into this virtual training. Not only that, building their own LMS, which is a learning management system online. It's like with our system, our CVC Virtual Academy, then every company can upload their own training in a proprietary form. It's like Sean that's doing his leadership training. I told him yesterday in the conversation, Sean, you need to be recording this. You need to be uploading this for future hires because you can't take the time to teach this course over and over each time you hire someone, but you can present it virtually. So Sheryl, what's your thoughts on what Brandi just said?
I've always believed in training. I think you need to train as long as you do anything. I mean, even if you're at the top, you still need to train. But the most important thing is like you said, we're bringing people in that know nothing about what we're doing. This is especially the business that we're in. It's a unique business. It's not something that you go to a technical school to learn. And that brings up another whole problem. We've always taught our kids, it seemed for years, you need to go to college instead of teaching them in the technical skills. And now I've got all these college students coming into this technical business and they're having to start at the bottom. They've got the knowledge of how to run something, but they don't know how to do it with their hands. So that continual training, I think, is the most important thing in a business. I don't care how far along you think your people are, there's always something they need training on.
And the 10th one is, and I'm gonna give you an example. This one is all about the need for innovation to shape a better future. And as I look at this, when I started working as a field technician in my own chimney sweep business, it was real simple. We just had a piece of paper, Brandi. That's all we had. We had this form, and then we put check marks on it. Then we started taking photos. Then we started using digital means of storing the photos. Now we have these software systems that are vastly advanced. And by using this technology, which you are a certified consultant and one of the leading ones, which is ServiceTitan, having this technology, what does it do for the business to be able to meet its profit and its effectiveness goals?
Oh, it's such a game changer. I do have to ask, so did you use carbon copy forms back then too?
No, we used what was called NCR, which is the paper that you have one sheet on it and wrote down on another. But NCR paper came out, that was National Cash Register, but that came out way before I started.
Okay. I mean, even 10 years ago when I started with Jeremy, I was having to take the little SD card and put it in the computer and download all the pictures. And we were on like 3-ply carbon copy. And I mean, it's just so vastly different today. And, back then, if you wanted to collect any data, that was somebody going through and hand pulling that and going through all the hand files in the filing cabinet. And nowadays with technology, I can just go into my CRM and click a button and have at my fingertips any KPI, anything that I want to look at. So it's just really such a game changer.
Yeah, not only that, but numerous companies can share data between them to come up with what is working, what is coming up. And the amount of data that you can mine out of this is unreal. Am I right on that?
Oh, yeah. And I have a client who went live today with the CRM ServiceTitan, and they weren't quite ready to have their own forms. So I went in and downloaded my forms and uploaded my forms to them to use until they're ready for their own forms. So you're exactly right. That data sharing is so powerful as well.
Yeah. So Sheryl, same token in yours. You do a couple things that technology has really vastly changed. In your manufacturing business, y'all use computer drawings, okay? Y'all don't draw plans for islands. This is done on computer, right?
Correct.
And then also, you're doing many, many interviews every day that takes technology because these people are not sitting in your offices, correct?
Correct. They're all Zoom.
So, how has technology changed this world for the better?
Well, before I go there, I want to tell Brandi our little tiny discs were called floppy disk, and we owned thousands
We
of
had
them.
those too. It just was before my time of coming to work with Jeremy, but we did have those.
Technology's taken us to a whole new realm. I mean, I'll just one little quick story. I went out of school, went to computer technology. I quit with a 99.98 because the computer I was working on was 3 times the size of our house. Now I've got more memory that I can hold in my hand than that. And so technology has moved us into a realm that I know it's going to keep improving, but every time something else comes new, it's kind of like I remember this on Star Trek. But it has so improved our lives. It's also confused our lives a lot because of so much technology and so much information. But as the world has progressed, certain things have got extremely better. We're better, like you say, you can communicate between company and company. And Brandi, you yourself know you have quit traveling as much. I don't travel as much because we can do a lot of what we're doing right here.
Yeah. And technology, I forget which airport I was in, but I think it was the Denver airport. And I went into my first Apple store that is completely non-human. And one of the things is it's impossible to shoplift there. That bet you in that little bitty thing in that airport little showroom, there must have been 100 video cameras recording every move, aimed at every angle. And you put your card in to go in, you give them the data, and then you can put it in your pocket or whatever. It's got you. When you go out, you are going to be charged for whatever item that you've done. So it has eliminated the human being. We all probably go through the self-checkout counters. And when you look at that, it's a change in technology. Even though we may hate them at the same time, this is what business. So what you've got to do in your business is, how can technology improve your processes? How can technology improve your output? I think that's where you've got to go. So Sheryl, anything you want to add in before we end today's episode?
Well, basically everybody needs to look around, see what's coming because it's coming. Okay. See if it will help your positioning in the world, your companies, and learn about it. A lot of the older, and I can fit in that bracket, will just push the new behind them. And it's not behind you, it's in front of your face. Check into it, get your employees up to par, and make use of what you've got. That's the main thing I've got to say. Just make use of what you got in front of you.
Okay. Brandi, what about you? What would you add in to end up today's?
I think that we've really covered a lot of great areas of focus, 10 great areas of focus for 2023. I would like to add in, it's Tosca's birthday. Let me see if I can give you guys a picture of her here. She's over there sleeping because she went for a big walk today, but it's her birthday. She's 7 today.
So my question is, did Jeremy sample her treat?
In that video years ago, he did. I'll be honest with you, Tosca's like me. She doesn't care about her birthday. I didn't even know it was her birthday. Jeremy is the one that stopped to get her a pup cup this morning, and really, he loves his birthday, so he really focuses on everyone else's birthday.
So did he take a sample again like I saw on the video from 3 years ago?
Not this year.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you joining us here on this week's episode of the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network. It's presented to you by our certified coaching team here at the CVC Success Group. And our purpose, our mission is to help you with the challenges that come up in your business. You see each and every one of us here. Contact us. Let us know. If you got an office staff member that you want to get better, then consider getting them up to that learning loft in Kansas City. Brandi, you've got a lot of classes coming up this year. Am I correct?
Yes, one every month through September.
And believe me, she puts it all into there and she exhausts herself out. It's a very good show. So appreciate you joining us today, and we'll see you next week on the next episode of the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network.